Saturday before week 5 and it's boring as hell. Boring is boring. Saturdays are boring to me, man. I'm a fantasy football nerd and I'm in my car and I'm off from work. I work at night and it's like 5 o'clock in the afternoon. I'm waiting for the Ohio State game to come on and it's boring. So I'm doing this video because I'm bored. And it's called Fantasy Football for Dummies. And y'all know they got the book series for dummies. And somebody like me, I grab it when I need, when they got a subject that I don't know about, I get that dummies book because, I mean, I'm not a dummy, but if you talking to a dummy, maybe I can understand it. So I know there's a lot of beginners out there that's playing fantasy football, and usually you do this video in the beginning of the season, but it's probably a lot of fantasy football beginners out there that really like it and really want to get good, but you don't have to, start researching just because the season is in. This is week 5. We're about to go into week 5, and I got a little list. I got like 5 things for beginners to need to keep continuing to do to get better, because the season is still just started. Even if you 0-4, it doesn't matter. You can come back and win. If you 1-3, the tables can turn. This is my first advice for the dummies out there. Listen to podcasts. This is very important. This is like the best thing you can do. You got a lot of fantasy football podcasts out there. You can just go on YouTube and find so-called experts talking about fantasy football. You need to be listening to this stuff every single day. My favorite podcasts, I got 2 of them. I got a lot of podcasts I listen to, but my favorite 2 is the Fantasy Footballers. You can find them on YouTube. Just type in Fantasy Footballers, or you can go to what I use is this app called TuneIn. TuneIn, you can get any radio station. You can get millions of podcasts. Get the TuneIn app and you type in fantasy football, and a lot of podcasts will pop up. And one of my favorites is Fantasy Footballers. Another one is Fantasy Focus Podcast. It's got Matthew Berry on there. Matthew Berry is a popular fantasy football talking guy, and he works for ESPN. And they just talk fantasy football every single day, from Monday through Friday. Some podcasts do the weekends, but these 2 particular, they do Monday through Friday, and they'll just tell you like players that they like, matchups that they like, players you should drop. That's where I get all my information from. I'm just pretty much telling on my streams. I just tell what I hear they say, but I don't just listen to 1 or 2 of them. I listen to about 8 or 9 of them. For real, I get a broader perspective. But those are 2 you should start out if you're a dummy. Number 2 is check the waiver wire, because you're a beginner and there's probably other people that's beginners in your league. Or it could be people that are just frustrated with good players. Check the waiver wire like every day. Probably check the waiver wire like 5 or 6 times a day. I'm constantly checking the waiver wire for players that might have been dropped. And that's really important, because you can get a gem off the waiver wire. Not even lying. I just picked up Courtland Sutton. It's a 10-team league. Nobody wanted him. Courtland Sutton right there. I just picked up Will Fuller. People got lives, I don't have a life. All I do is check the waiver wire every day, So people got kids, people got wives, people got car notes and house bills, They ain't got time to be checking the waiver wire. So if you check the waiver wire, you're going to find yourself somebody that can win you the league. So that's my number 2 advice. Number 3, is when you do pick up that player, get a lot of information on the player. This will give you a better idea of who this player is, and you'll feel more comfortable sticking him in the lineup, or you feel more comfortable staying away from him. I like to look at what the person was doing during the draft. I like to see their story, like what type of neighborhood did they grow up in. Like, for example, David Montgomery, who I got, he's from Cincinnati. I live in Cincinnati. He's from Cincinnati. You know, he grew up in a single parent household. You know, his mom had a bunch of kids. He lived in a pretty rough neighborhood. And, you know, you kind of see the person talk and you see their attitude. He's a good kid, you know, and he seems like he's a hard worker. When you grow up in a rough neighborhood like that, you know, you tend to work harder because you don't want to go back to the same streets. So I know that his desire is there. You know, he's a good football player too, but that extra umph that he has from being from a rough neighborhood keep him, you know what I'm saying, give him more motivation. Another example is Christian McCaffrey. When he was a rookie, I did like some research on him. You know, his father played in the NFL. I like kids whose fathers played in the NFL, your father, your uncle, whatever, because from a kid, that's all he knew was football. You know what I'm saying? Christian McCaffrey, what's his dad's name? Ed McCaffrey. Ed McCaffrey was a good receiver for the Denver Broncos. He was just, you know what I'm saying, a hard worker. So I know he's giving that to his kid. So way back when Christian McCaffrey was a rookie, I'm like, I'm getting this guy. I end up getting him in like the 4th round. Nobody was on him. When you got good roots like that, they're going to get passed down. And plus, that discipline, I know his father be on him like, yo, this is the things that you got to do. DK Metcalf is the same way. His dad was a offensive lineman, and his uncle was my boy, Eric Metcalf for the Cleveland Browns. Eric Metcalf was a beast. And I think he had another uncle that played football too, so he got some good roots. So do some information on those guys. You might find it's good stories too, man. It's good stories. A lot of rags to riches stories, but like Chris McCaffrey, just a person that was just in the bloodline. So yeah, go on YouTube, look at highlights, look at college interviews, look at training camp interviews, look at life stories, man. It'll help you out. Number 4 is the eye test, which really means just watch football. I like the eye test because I'm not no big numbers, speed, score guy, you know what I'm saying? If the guy looks good and they're going to him a lot, I'm going to pick him up. You know, that's just plain and simple. If he looks like Chris Thompson is a perfect example. Chris Thompson from Washington Redskins, it seems like he just gets little 3 to 5 yard dump off passes and he'll run for like 10 yards, it seems like, all the time, especially if the Washington Redskins are playing from behind. And it seems like it's just easy for him to get it. It's just easy for him to get catches, easy for him to get yards. You know, I like that. That's the eye test right there. And like Travis Kelce, I always try to get him. He's just like the main person that they go to. Eye test is just the eye test. Lamar Jackson is like, this dude can just run for 15 yards and it don't even look like it's nothing. Those are points. So watch the games. A lot of people can't watch the games. Watch highlights. Just try to watch as much as you can. And the last advice, dummies out there, don't give up, dummy. It's only been 4 games. Something can change around. You know what I'm saying? You can get a good waiver wire pick. You know what I'm saying? Somebody might give up on a player. You can drop him. A lot of people get hurt. And they drop their players that's hurt. You know, and the injury probably only lasts like 2 weeks. Put them on your lineup, especially if it's a good player. Or somebody's not having a good start of the season, like Will Fuller. I just picked him up. He about to blow up, yo. You know what I'm saying? People just giving up, like, forget this guy. You know, people don't got patience, but you have patience. Don't give up. Watch those podcasts, listen to those podcasts, and maybe you won't be a dummy.